It's estimated that about 15% of the population was traumatized as a kid. Depends how you classify trauma. But most of those people don't know they have it. People do notice they have symptoms. They're probably working on it. They're talking about it. They're trying to get better. But most people with CPTSD are just suffering with it. They're trying to get better, but they're not. Now, you might be someone who's lived your whole life afraid that you're going to become one of those people, stuck in trauma, never being happy or loved or fulfilled or financially stable. And that is in fact a risk that comes with CPTSD, especially if you don't find anything that helps you. And I get it. It's hard to know when you're first starting out on your healing what is going to help you. But if you give up and you don't try, you're even more at risk to get stuck. Or maybe you've tried some approaches to healing from trauma, but you kind of only, did it halfway, or you have known what steps would help you and change your life, but you haven't found the power inside to keep moving forward. And I want to talk about this today to encourage you to take your healing seriously, to double down on it so that you can heal. And I'm going to lay out 10 things that you can do. And if you're ready to move forward with that right now, obviously, not all of them are going to apply to you. But these are 10 things that help me and that I teach to all the people in my coaching programs. When you've heard everything that I'm going to lay out in this video, you can pick one or two action items that are most important to you, and you can start implementing them today. And I would encourage you to take the ones that, like if you didn't heal them, would actually cause you the most pain based on what's caused pain in the past. And of those, also ask yourself, what's actually fixable for you right now? So something that's important to you and something that can be fixed. And that will give you like a little win fairly quickly in the healing process. And that is definitely helpful when you're sitting there looking at a whole bunch of things you think that maybe you should change about your life. Get something that's important and fixable so that you have that feeling of like, there, one down. And that is shown to be very helpful to people who are trying to stick with a process. Healing from trauma requires some persistence. Okay, so here are the 10 things. Number 1, learn what complex PTSD is, not just what you've heard on the internet, not just what other people say about it, and not focusing all your energy on what might be the diagnosis of other people who are in your story. That's not the same thing as understanding what's going on with your brain and learning about your brain and about brain dysregulation and what that does to you, and about emotional dysregulation and re-regulation and what a difference that can make. How does that impact your life? We didn't know until very recently that CPTSD is an injury to your brain and nervous system. And a lot of therapists and clinical professionals still don't know this. It's really important that you educate yourself so that you can choose professional help well based on people who get it, and so that you can make decisions on your healing that's, based on current knowledge and not old ideas. Number 2, when you look at yourself and how you're doing with your healing process, be willing to notice some of the problems that maybe have nothing to do with trauma. Now, it's true, CPTSD can make it hard to focus. It can make it hard to be consistent, to be as kind and considerate as you want to be. And it might make it hard to stay present. CPTSD might almost certainly has damaged relationships in your life. It might have damaged your health as well. Okay, so all those things are trauma related, but everybody has a couple of problems that are just kind of ordinary human problems. So it could be something like, maybe you're often late. A lot of people struggle with that. You don't have to be traumatized to be somebody who's chronically late. Trauma could be implicated, but sometimes that's one of the things that you just have, It's just something you're doing right now. And the reason I love the problems that are just normal person problems is because they're a little easier to solve. You don't have to heal your brain necessarily to get that going. It could be that you need to keep your kitchen cleaner, that the whole kitchen smells like garbage all the time, and when people come over, you're ashamed. And I know how trauma can drive that kind of procrastination, but it's a solvable problem. And I love low-hanging fruit problems, things that you can solve quickly and get another little win. A little win, you start feeling confident that you can take on another project for healing. Okay. Number 3, prepare to move your stories about the abuse and neglect that happened to you out of present time looping thoughts and into what I call the memory bucket. If you can imagine, there's a bucket, there's your present time thinking, and there is a memory bucket. So there's everything going on in your mind now. CPTSD can trap your emotional and body reactions from old traumatic experiences and then keep them looping in your mind as if they're happening right now. That's why it's so hard to have CPTSD. It's a different thing than a memory. It's activating all your adrenaline, your cortisol, it speeds your heart rate, it scatters your thoughts and puts your whole body in a state of stress. So it makes it really hard to stop thinking about it or reacting to it. That's what I call looping, or I call it an electric thought. You know, it's very charged. What you want is to have access to your thoughts and memories, but not to be controlled by them, not to, get physiologically changed every time they pop into your awareness. An ordinary memory has the trauma element deactivated. It's not electric, it's unplugged. You can remember it, and if anybody asks you a question about it, you can remember all the same details about it, but it doesn't trigger this huge physiological and neurological response in you. If you had trauma, you probably have some looping electric thoughts that give you very charged reactions, and you probably have some memories that are not charged. So when I say get ready, one thing that will help you is to become open to the idea that you don't always have to be reactive toward the past. I teach a method to calm reactions. There are others out there. My method is called the daily practice, and if you watch this channel, you hear me talk about it like a lot. And I point you toward the description section under every video. That's where you can find it. It's a free course. It takes less than an hour to learn it and try it, and you can give it a try and see if, like me, it helps you take those looping thoughts and just kind of calm them down. Sometimes naming those stress thoughts and releasing them really does make a difference. So, good thing to try. Now, I'm going to keep teaching you under the assumption that you've tried these techniques, but if you haven't, just try to hear the essence of what I'm saying here. If you feel anxious at the thought of surrendering your fear and resentment through these exercises, and some people do because fear and resentment, for a lot of us, it's a primitive form of a boundary. Like being anxious and worried or angry can feel like the only protection we've got. Like, no way, you're not getting in. If that's you, I would just say, do it a tiny bit at a time, do a little bit at a time and see what happens, and just see when you do surrender fear about something, do you end up incapacitated? Or does it make you a doormat? Or does it make you feel like a little more lighter-hearted? If you're feeling more lighthearted, you're doing it right. It's not been my experience that facing what's bothering you and writing it down amplifies it or makes it worse. In fact, it makes me feel freer of it and more empowered. It makes me more clear about when something dangerous is in my presence and when I need to act on something. So you can try that. Just try that. You don't have to believe me. You try. Number 4 is stop trying to make other people not trigger you. All right? So if you get very triggered by people, and pretty much everyone with complex PTSD gets triggered by people. That's what makes connection hard for us, in fact. And that's what makes us have a tendency to want to isolate or keep people at arm's length, because those interactions can be so triggering. So there's a misunderstanding that if we could just get other people to stop behaving the way they do, or saying what they say, or making us feel the way we feel, then we would be okay. And sometimes, occasionally that's true, but it's usually not true. Because even if they wanted with all their hearts to stop triggering you, they probably wouldn't succeed. The trigger is in here. It's, somewhere in here. It's for you to work on. And anyway, most people are not willing to try to change everything for you. That's just reality. So you learning how to calm your triggers is going to be more effective, easier, and more empowering for you than trying to make the world around you change so that it doesn't trouble you. Now, when you can learn to calm your triggers, you become more perceptive, and you can begin to tell if someone in your presence is actually a difficult person, or if you're just feeling triggered and having difficulty, but they're not causing that difficulty. That's hard to tell sometimes, right? Surely you struggle. Sometimes I do. Is it just me? Is it them? Am I being crazy? Am I being a doormat? And in most cases, you're confused about that question because you have triggers. So learning to know the difference is called discernment. And discernment is one of the biggest things that we lose with CPTSD. The ability to tell the difference between, am I generating this drama, or is something actually being done to me? It's so difficult to go through life when you're not clear about that. That is a consequence for some of us of how we were raised, feeling really scared and upset and being like, I'm scared, there's all this fighting in the house, and go, no, there's nothing going on, shut up, go to bed. right? So you start second guessing yourself and it turns into maybe a developmental delay, where you just have a little trouble like making sense of reality. So using the writing technique I'm telling you in the daily practice can be a really good way to start strengthening your discernment. You could also do that with a therapist. You could do that with friends. You could do that in a 12-step fellowship. It's really important, though, to have a way to face what's intense for you and to get some support while you figure out what is reality. There's no substitute for other people for that. And what a relief when you get a strong feeling that someone you meet doesn't belong in your life, or something they did was a deal breaker for you, versus when someone is a person you want in your life and you can see your triggers for what they are. You can work to make your relationship better. You can become more trustworthy. You can be a better friend to them by calming your triggers. What you open up for yourself with those calm triggers is choice. It's not going to make you like a perfectly nice person who puts up with anything. It's not going to make you mean. It just gives you choices about how you want to respond because you can perceive things better. So the other great thing about learning to calm your triggers is that you become flexible. You become able to hang out with a variety of different people, and you can be in all kinds of circumstances. You don't have to be so particular and have, so-called boundaries about, I don't do this, I don't let people say that. You can start to be flexible and just let people be themselves and let life happen around you. You are safe to relax around people when you know that when you need a boundary and you need to step back from someone, you can. And when you know your boundaries and you're prepared to honor them, you can be less afraid to connect with people and instead be more open to them. So all the bad things that come with CPTSD, problems with relationships, focusing, balancing your emotions, stress levels, all that gets less activated if you don't get triggered. So there's your superpower. If you were to do one thing, learn to notice when you're triggered and bring it down. Now, learning to notice dysregulation and a triggered state in yourself, that's a huge piece of what I teach in my coaching programs and my courses. Dysregulation triggers disconnection from people, and that in turn triggers self-defeating behavior. And when healing begins in those areas, good parts of you have room to come shining through. Your kindness, your competence, your talent, your joy, all of this has space to take root in your life and bear fruit. The good things in you, that's what gets suppressed by all the trauma. And it gets locked down when your reaction to hurt and trauma is to start to control the environment. Some people go through life suppressed, for years, but only because they were too dysregulated to manage stepping out of their safe zone. In the safe zone, you can't afford to connect with people or face your mistakes, right? But when you learn to calm triggers and re-regulate your emotions and your brain, you can take some risks and your life grows. Now remember, this is not just to feel better. You do have to feel better. You do need that. You deserve that. And what it gives you is an opening for the real healing to begin. And that's you becoming yourself and delivering the love and the contribution that you have to bring to the world. All right, number 5, stop trash talking the people who you choose to have in your life. It's very common for people who don't have CPTSD to just throw labels on people. This person's a narcissist, they're toxic, they're worthless. But if you really want to heal, if you want to double down on your healing, I encourage you to stop using those labels on people and instead just start noticing whatever you call it, the thing that other people do or have that is so troubling for you. The thing to focus on is not the other person, but the way that you get tense or you struggle around them. The way that your emotions rise up or you get dysregulated. That's the part. That's the part where you actually have influence over what happens next. You do have a right to make decisions about whether to let someone into your life or not. So now when you're triggered by someone, instead of just telling them, hey, you're a narcissist, and therefore, you should read this book I found about narcissists, because that always goes over well, right? No, it doesn't. Well, you can either accept them or you can step away from the relationship. The more you recover, the more you'll be at peace with the people you want in your life, and the more quickly you'll be willing to withdraw from people who you don't want in your life. Focusing on yourself is always going to be your superpower. When you can notice, oh, here we go, this is where I get triggered. Now, this doesn't mean that you should just learn to put up with terrible behavior in other people. You want to be aware, you want to be grounded, lucid, clear-headed, clear-eyed, and perceptive so that you can make good decisions about how to proceed when somebody begins to treat you badly. And if somebody's treating you really well, of course, you want to be at your best. So you want to be able to open your heart and enjoy that relationship when it's a good thing to do. Number 6, stop clinging to bad relationships that make you miserable. Now, I have to bring this in any discussion of what it means to double down on your healing. Staying in bad relationships and hemorrhaging all your energy and your cognition to a situation where you're fighting all the time, or you're being treated in an abusive manner, or you're being gravely disrespected, or you're sad all the time, this will halt your healing. Now, I understand there are relationships where there's an obligation or a duty, as there is with, dependent children or with certain other people who rely on you for care. And that may require extra effort and extra support to remove yourself from those situations that are destroying your happiness and your chances of healing trauma. But whether it's simple or complicated for you to get that distance, it's important to keep moving forward. All right, number 7, it's the same thing, but for jobs. Don't stay in jobs that make you miserable unless your life depends on it. There are times when we all have to do what we have to do to get a paycheck, but not forever. Don't let that be forever. And if the paycheck is not the problem right now, I want you to ask yourself, is being miserable at work something you are unconsciously choosing so that you can avoid facing something else that's hard for you right now? And I talk about this very directly because it's something that I've had to face in myself too. There was a lot of time when I was still at the effect of CPTSD where if I weren't miserable, I would have to notice immediately that there was this giant hole in my life where close relationships were supposed to be. And instead I had superficial relationships and I hated my job. And I was getting my self-esteem off the fact that I had this job, but I wasn't happy and I didn't like the way I was being treated. And I stayed 10 years working for an awful boss. But because I didn't have to stay in that job, I know the problem was in here. The problem was that I was accepting this unhappy lot in life in exchange for not having to make changes that felt impossible for me back then. And this was when I was a single mom. And I think I could have, I was probably scared to leave the security of that job. Except that one day when the recession of 2008 got rolling, you know what? I didn't have a job anymore anyway. But honestly, I'm so glad everything fell through because it was then that I started my first business, really because, nobody else would hire me. I had to do something for money. I got my business off the ground. And that ended up being a really happy way to earn a living for many years until I transitioned to doing this, to becoming Crappy Childhood Fairy. And for those of you who have other extenuating circumstances that are keeping you stuck, feel the truth of what I'm saying. Let it guide you. Don't let yourself give up on your healing. Trying doesn't always lead to success, but success favors people who try. All right, number 8, detach from the belief that you passively, just magically, attract bad people. Now, I hear people say this all the time. I attract narcissists. Well, acknowledge that the issue is not really who is attracted to you. The issue is, who are you attracted to? Who do you tolerate? Who do you date? Who do you sleep with? That is the problem. And that's a much better problem to have than some sort of magic occurrence that flies out of the sky. Oh, look, a narcissist has just landed and attached themselves to me. It can't happen without your cooperation. It may seem like they just occur. Think of those signs in the park. It says, ticks occur. Narcissists occur. But you do not have to let them into your life. Occasionally, exploitative people do look for vulnerable people and target them, but most of the problems in your life are more likely to be caused by a lack of boundaries on your part, a lack of a red flag detector, and being able to see, who should I let into my life? It's your red flag detector that needs to be switched into the on position, and that's part of trauma healing too. If you're going to double down on your healing, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to take responsibility that you are the gatekeeper. And you may have heard me say, I attract mosquitoes, but, I don't marry them. Or sometimes I say, I don't sleep with them. I think that would be a good t-shirt. But see, attracting them is not really the problem. Number 9, if you have addictive behaviors, make recovery your first priority. Alcohol, drugs, food, pornography, spending, all that stuff. Your healing will get an enormous boost if you can take care of that. When you allow yourself to experience life's ups and downs and show up for it and not escape by some means, and I think we should include limerence in that, you know, just checking out into fantasy, right? When you can stay in your life, then you can start to solve your problems. I know how tempting it is to try to grab on and control things or run away from them or just get into some kind of oblivion, some comfort. And it's almost universal with people with CPTSD, the urge to fly away or crawl into a hole. It's going to take one form or the other. It's going to visit you sometimes, but if you're using anything at all to sort of genuinely escape, like drugs, it's going to delay your ability to cope with feelings of disappointment and stress and emptiness and loneliness. Those are feelings that we actually need to have sometimes because they guide us into action. I totally know what it's like. But if you're using something to escape, it will make healing almost impossible. And even when you're perfectly healed, life is going to have its ups and downs, so there's always something to face. You're going to lose friends. Big disappointments will happen. Outside events will happen. You're going to need a means to be able to handle what comes. Whatever approach to healing that you choose for yourself, you're going to need an easy way to self-comfort and bring yourself back out of dysregulation and into re-regulation. And if you want to learn how to do it, I can teach you. That's all in the links in the description section below this video and all my videos, if that's something that interests you. When you always have a way to calm your reactions and comfort yourself, you'll find it's a lot easier to overcome addictions. That is true freedom, when you feel like, I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever it is, I'll be able to face it. All right, number 10, sit down and ask yourself, this is just a thought exercise, and I really like this one. Ask yourself, if I really had to solve this problem of having CPTSD, what are 10 things I could do? And I love doing this. You can apply it to any kind of problem, but it's a really good one to do about how you would heal from your trauma because you actually have the answers. You do. You have the answers in there. You just haven't tapped them yet. Or you may not have had the energy to focus on, taking action on them right now. So make a list of them, the 10 things that if you really had to solve this problem, in a short period of time, what would you do? You don't have to act on all of them at once. They can be preposterous, but write it. Just bring them into the sunlight of your awareness, the actions you could take if you really wanted to. Let them into your mind and heart and just see what happens. And if you want to learn about how it feels when your CPTSD symptoms do heal, I've got a video lined up for you right here, and I will see you very soon.